So what the heck happened yesterday? Alright, I think I'm finally ready to tell you the story. The short version is, I had a meeting with administration where I was giving them an update on a class that I've been teaching for the last year. It's been a 2-year total project, basically started the same time that I came to my job. And it's a freshman course that's designed to help students get up to speed with what it's like to be in college and also teach them some fundamental skills that they're going to need to succeed. As I built the class, one of the biggest challenges I had was that we had to take every freshman through this class in a year. So that's like 400 people. And the goal was to do it in one section every semester. So that's me teaching 400 people a year, about 200 each term. So I saw this as an opportunity to test a theory that I've had for a long time that's backed by a bunch of evidence, which is that people learn well when they work in groups, and that we could democratize higher education a bit by increasing the mentorship role that upperclassmen play on freshmen. So I rolled out a class, we test drove it in the fall, ramped it up to 240 students in the spring, and the key features of this class were that we taught students essentially how to teach themselves a very difficult subject, but we provided massive amounts of support while we did it in the form of upperclassmen mentors who did everything from help them with time management skills to answer the detailed questions that they're struggling with for the particular topic we taught. The results were mixed, as can be expected with any new thing, especially when you're dealing with freshmen who aren't really sure what they're up to yet. A lot of people are really just figuring themselves out as learners. And so we had some people who really succeeded in the class, others who really struggled, and we learned a lot about how to adapt all the systems and things we'd created to really meet the needs of a wide range of learners. One of the core values of the class was that by working in teams, there really isn't much that a student can't do. That you don't have to wait 4 years to contribute. And so some really neat things happened. Student groups coming out of this freshman class have already started launching businesses and have created some really neat programs and smartphone apps and things like that that are all centered around finding a human need and then figuring out how to meet that need. In this class, it was through computer code. But what was really exciting to me was seeing what happened with students next. Some of the students became TAs for the class. They became these upperclassmen mentors. Other students moved on to take harder classes and have already excelled in subjects that depend on the one we taught. So there are a lot of measurements that say this thing worked really well. My favorite one, though, is looking at the student workers who mentored everyone in the class, hearing success story over success story of how they used their experience in this class as the number one talking point in things like their job hunts and looking for internships. There was also a lot of peer advising that took place in which the upperclassmen would help the freshmen with everything from figuring out where to eat and get your laundry done to how to form a successful learning community, build your friendships early so that you can support each other through classes, and what a neat experience for the leadership folks here in how to form a group, how to lead a team with a wide range of abilities and even interest levels. And it was just amazing watching this whole thing evolve. Everybody did such an incredible job. The students in the class, as well as all the upperclassmen mentors. But of course, you run into some challenges when you teach things this way. It feels very different. It's not what you're expecting. And so there were certainly a number of students in the class who were pretty uncomfortable with the idea that really we were playing tour guide and expecting them to teach themselves a lot of the material. we kind of set goals, provided them with resources, and then expected them to figure it out. But that was based on the fact that it's probably the number one skill that anybody actually learns in school. Identify a thing you want to do, and then figure out the gap you have between your current knowledge base and what it is you need to be able to do this thing you're trying to do. And then knowing how to go fill that gap on your own by seeking out help from other people, finding resources on the web. And so that's a really meta goal for a class, right? This is a class about how to do class, but also a class about learning how to do a very specific thing. In this case, it was computer programming. But above all, what we're trying to do is drive a cultural change at our school that starts with the freshmen and trickles up. A culture of support and of peer mentoring networks and looking out for each other and learning how to learn so that the sky really is the limit for the people coming through our school. But when you start baking those types of values into a class, when you start adding ideas like entrepreneurship and creativity into early classes, it can be very scary for the administration because they're not quite sure what's going to happen. And even in a class that was taught by one faculty member to all the students, the experience that an individual student had varied widely based on a number of factors in the way the class was designed. So after test driving this thing for a year, we look at all the student feedback on this course, and my attitude towards it was take the positive comments as indicators of things that are working well, and take the negative comments as things that need to be improved on. And we learned an awful lot when we taught it for the first semester, made adjustments, saw a dramatic change in success levels of the students in the class, as well as actual engagement and enthusiasm and raw learning that was done. But, there's still some positive and some negative comments here at the end of the first year of test driving this class. That's to be expected. And so yesterday, now that the first year is over, I went into a meeting with the administration where we were going to look at all of these feedback forms and the results that we achieved in terms of what the students learned based on their demonstrations on assignments and things like that, and decide what's next. But what happened is I walked into a room with people who had already made a decision. The administration had already decided everything that they wanted to have happen, and sadly, their decision and their thoughts on what we do next largely ignored any of the positives that came from this experience and any of the positives that came from this course, and just used the negatives to justify the decision that they had made. So what I'm learning from this is that innovation is very challenging, not just because you have to have a good idea, not just because you have to have a good idea and execute, but because in addition to having a good idea and executing, you've got to sell this in both directions. You've got to make the students comfortable with it, but even more so, you've got to make the administration comfortable with the idea of a revolutionary new method, because they've got to defend it to the people above them, who are also going to be uncomfortable. But what ended up happening over the course of the year is that the administration didn't grow more comfortable. And no matter what we tried to do, they were scared. They were scared of what we were doing. They didn't understand it. And so they made a decision based mostly on their response to the things that they were still receptive to, which, once you're afraid, it's all the negative stuff. And so largely, what they want me to do is scrap everything that we put together for the last year and start with a blank sheet of paper on a new course that has new goals and a new structure and a new format. So that's a bit disappointing. I'm trying to figure out how I can do that. I'm trying to figure out how to take care of my people, the undergrad mentors. I don't want them to be worried yet. This is a long way from concluded, but it's also very challenging. And so, I'm just trying to figure this all out now, and how I can make a thing that gives our students what they need, but that this administration can also feel comfortable with. I think part of the reason that I reacted as strongly as I did, why I'm feeling as upset about the whole thing as I am, is that the leadership over this whole course has been pretty challenging for me. You know, I recognize that I'm young. They love to remind me on a daily basis. After having not really had clear goals, I set some and worked towards them, and it turns out I picked the wrong goals. But they weren't very nice about it. And I know this is professional and they're not supposed to be coddling me or anything like that. And I'm not going there. But there's still something to be said for kindness. When you see somebody putting their passion into something, when you see somebody trying to make a project their life's work, you can be kind even if you're not going to continue going in their direction. So yesterday I said I wasn't sure whether this was the moment of despair in the story or whether it was the resolution and that this thing was done and that the answer was defeat. Now what I'm realizing is maybe it's both. But I'm encouraged by the fact that even though Rocky loses at the end of the first one, and even though we've got a resolution in defeat there, it's actually just the middle, right? Because Rocky 2, there's a different story there. What I know is that I am far from being done with this. This is the project. This is what I have to work on. Everybody knows college is becoming the next bubble. I just read an article today that said college tuition is going to double in the next 20 years. We are on our way to making ourselves extinct. And it's my job to make sure that my current students are getting what they pay for, and even more importantly, that I protect this place. That I protect the idea of higher education. The idea that we can change our lives by learning a new concept. So that remains as our world spins faster and faster and becomes more and more practical every day. And I am so doggone excited to have people like you joining me on this journey. I'm not stopping till I change the world. I'm not stopping. But I am going to take a break and go to the climbing gym. I'll be back with you in a bit.